The movie and Light Up the Sky is a celebration of the two biggest achievements of Blackpink, the Coachella performance and their world tour. And I do think that it was created for fans. If you're a Blink, you're going to enjoy these two materials immensely because it is a celebration of those two biggest achievements in their career. It's, if you were there on either or both events, then this is a good way to relive it, to see them larger than life and hear their voices and their music blasting through those great speakers of the movie house, or if you have a great speaker at home if you're watching the special. And or if you weren't there, this would be the second best way to experience those two biggest events. But if you're a non-fan like me, I'm not a hater, but I'm not a fan either. The biggest issue that I have is that these two materials are actually the same. I paid like $16 for something that I could have watched on Netflix. But, well, they re-edited it and they added some materials, new materials here and there, but it's the same thing. And that's the biggest beef that I have with YG. Why did you make me watch the same materials twice? Okay, so the movie and Light Up the Sky. I do think first, I think these two materials were created for fans, for Blinks. And if it was so, it's a huge success, greatly made because it's a celebration of the two most important achievements of Blackpink in their careers. And that's the Coachella performance and the world tour. I say so because that's really the center of the entire thing. The narrative was centered on those two things. And having to experience that again, if you're a fan and you were a part of either or both, having to hear those sound, the song, their voices and their music through those great speakers in the cinema, or if you have a great speaker at home and you're watching Netflix, and having to see them larger than life, if you were in either or both, then this is a great way to experience it again. If you weren't on either, if you were not present on either of those events, then this is the second best way to experience those. Okay, but if you're a non-fan like me, I'm not a hater, I'm just not a fan. It did not really present to me anything. It did not provide me an insight on the creative process. It did not give me a better understanding of who they are, of who these four girls are as artists. But the biggest beef that I have with YG is that this is the same material. They copied and pasted the Netflix special and put it into a movie. And I'm like, I paid $16 to watch the same material. Well, they sort of re-edited it. They added new scenes here and there, but it's basically the same material. So that's $16 plus popcorn and drinks. That's an issue. It's a beef that I have to settle with YG. And Blackpink had nothing to do with it. Yeah, so first is that it didn't really provide me any depth into their artistry, and that it did not, and that is the same material. Another thing is that I do have an issue with Teddy. I do not hate him. I've always respected him as a songwriter and as a producer, and he really has made like a lot of great songs. But the thing is that there's something, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth for me that he was the one who introduced the four women. Because I felt like, well, obviously in the interviews that were shown, they're all eloquent, they're articulate, they sound good, they're obviously beautiful. They can very well introduce themselves. Why do you have to use a guy to introduce them? I get it, he's the main producer, he wrote all of their hits, he produced all of their hits as well, and he has been with them from the beginning, and he's like probably like the mentor or the father. I get that part. But still, I have four women here. They can very much introduce themselves. Besides, if there's this huge talk in K-pop that just because these K-pop artists aren't writing their own materials, it doesn't make them less of an artist. I agree with that. Their artistry lies in their performance. So let's not talk about that. Why have Teddy there? His role is producing and songwriting. So let's talk about the other aspect of artistry of the four women and let them do the talking. That's just a preference. I would rather hear it from the four women themselves. And then if you're a Nan fan like me, I was hoping to get a glimpse of their creative process, how they do things, you know, maybe a little more about what they do outside of other artistic things that they do outside of their music. But more importantly, really their own creative process when they're creating songs, when they're doing all of those you know, their preparation and stuff. But I did not get a lot of that. I don't know if it's a function of questions because I don't know the questions that were asked. They were shown answering questions, but the questions were not actually shown. So maybe it's a function of questions. Maybe the girls were not given the right questions so that they could explore more about it. But even to me as a fan, I'm not really interested about the personal lives of the artists that I follow. My favorite band of all time, Linkin Park. I don't know much about their personal lives, except what they show on social media. So if they share something in social media, then I'd know about it because I follow them on social media. Other than that, I'm not concerned. It's their personal life, you know. I like their music, I like their artistry, I like their art, not really their personal life. And I do think that they're entitled to that. And there was this part in the movie where Jenny said that she doesn't really like talking about herself. And I felt like, you go, girl. nobody should force you. No one is allowed to force you to talk about something you don't like. And so I was hoping maybe she could sway the conversation away from her personal life and just talk about the artistry. Or maybe, just maybe, YG will actually just give her a chance to talk about her creative process and artistry instead of her family background. But that's what they talked about. And again, for fans, they're probably interested in knowing that. And it's not like it's a bad thing, you know. It also pays to understand certain parts of their life, especially if it plays a part in the creative process, in the creation of their art. But in this material, in Light Up the Sky or in the movie, it did not make that connection. It just showed their life before they become trainees and their life as trainees, how tough it was in YG, the monthly exams, blah blah blah, and how they ended up being Blackpink and the success that they've garnered. So I mean, that the training part, that was a good thing to know, but all of those things they've also already talked about before. So yeah, I just wish that if they talked about the personal lives of the family lives of these four girls, I wish there was a connection, you know, a connection has been made between that and how they are now as artists. So it just I felt like it was a missed opportunity to talk to non-fans like me. And talking about their artistry and creative process will also elevate Blackpink as artists. So in the eyes of not like artists strictly, but in the eyes of non-fans like me. So yeah, those are my observations. But the biggest beef that I have with YG is that this is the same material you've made me pay $16 plus tax and popcorn and drinks for the same material. I could have just watched it for free. Yeah, and in closing, I think in all seriousness, YG has always positioned their artists to be their K-pop idols to be the artists among idols. I think that's a very, very good positioning, and they've made that effort in the boy bands like Big Bang, Winner, and iKON. They were always made to write their own materials, but they've never done that for women. For 21 and for Blackpink, they were always given materials to sing and to perform. So I wish that, and if that's the system that they will carry on, fine, but I wish that in instances like this, movies and specials on streaming services, that they will be given the opportunity to express their own creative process, to express their own ideas, and then eventually that, I hope that resonates and be carried on into the creation of their own music. That's it actually. That if you're a fan, my recommendation is that if you're a fan, of course, watch both. If you're not a fan, just watch one of that. If you already have a Netflix subscription, just watch that, because the movie is the same thing with few additional footage and some re-editing.